Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'suk b'divrei Torah. V'arevna Adonai Eloheinu et divrei Toratcha b'finu p'fimcha beit Yisrael, v'niyeh אנחנו בצאצאינו וצאצאיך בית ישראל, כולנו יודע שמך ולומדי תורתך לשמה, ברוך אתה אדוני המלמד תורה לעמו ישראל.
אמן.
אמן.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר בחר בנו מכל עמים ונתן לנו את תורתו, ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen.
Amen.
Okay. I hope we can do this without without needing any more time, because I actually love to chat to you guys, and sometimes it takes a few minutes, but then it loses time from the shir. But to me, if I can't get to chat to my friends, then I don't know what's the point. I don't know what to do. So we'll see how it goes. I just wanted to, after we do the daf, I just wanted to read a very interesting article on Musa for you, which is, you'd find it, there are two sources for it. It's in the book, The Art of Thinking Clearly, and it talks about the paradox of choice. So I might as well just give over the idea now, which is quite interesting. So the idea is as follows. I mean, I don't know if any of you guys know who Daniel Kellerman is, and Ariel, the author.
Yeah.
On blank now. The Upside of Irrationality.
Oh, it's Dan Ariely.
Dan Ariely.
Ah, yes.
These are behavioral psychologists. Sorry, first thing in the morning, I think I got steamrolled by a truck. So these guys that study behavioral psychology. And I tell you what was an interesting article. It started off by the psychologist Barry Schwartz. So they were studying the art of happiness. Also Daniel Gilbert. He wrote a TED talk on it, and very similar sort of themes. So I was chatting to one of the guys that I know that's gone to New York, Byron. I'm not going to mention his surname for the sake of
Yes.
No, we know him.
And the reality is, so he shall remain guilty to his friends, but innocent to the public, okay? So Byron, I remember, talked to me about an interesting phenomenon. I said to him, China, surely you pulled the right sort of check and came right and found your sort of spouse in New York. And he said something to me interesting that I never thought about. It blew me away. He turned around and said that he's not finding anybody and the women aren't finding any sort of suitable man. And the reason being is there's somebody better around the corner. And whenever he dates somebody, he always feels that maybe he's compromising and there is somebody better around the corner. The paradox here is the freedom of choice is the most damaging thing that life has to offer. Let me just give you some ideas. And I'm not trying to give you guys Musa. It's something I've been thinking about deeply. In the old days, there was a village. There were only 2 or 3 eligible women. This woman had a haggle tooth. This one was 300 pounds. And that one looked moderately all right and you wouldn't throw up. Okay, those were your choices. You'd go out with a woman that hopefully would live to the age of 40. She hasn't had any pre-existing genetic conditions. You'd have a couple of kids. You had nothing to live for. You had no TV. You had no supermarket. And obviously, you'd have a lot of time on your hands, and 6 kids would come as a result. If you lived to 35, 40, it was a lot. Your kids would obviously, half of them would end up dying of everything from dysentery to smallpox, but maybe you had a couple of kids left, and so the human population grew. But I mean, you could see even the drama that Adam had, and Adam only had one wife and one choice, and he still complained. What was this? And he turned around to Hashem and he said, "She did it to me. The wife you gave me did this to me," and that was when Hashem chose. So, can you imagine the amount of problems that we have when we have free choice? So I mean, I remember my brother and Jackie recently moved into a new house. You know, if you think about sorting out a house, there's tiling, there's ceramics, there's granite, there's marble, there's stone, there's wood, there's glass, there's every type of laminate known to man. And, you know, you just get these books where these sales guys come and there are a million choices of carpets and this and that. You go to a supermarket. there are a million choices of coffee and cereals, etc. This is less of a problem in South Africa and more of a problem overseas.
Yeah.
134 types of red wine, 64 different cleaning products, 30,000 items on the shelf. You look at Amazon. The worst thing is, I remember going to Amazon Toti, and on DSTV, there are like 200 channels. You spend most of your time flicking, at least with Netflix, you choose something. But you spend most of your time trying to look for that golden nugget channel. And if you look at how much time you waste making decisions compared to the right decision, it's a very, very difficult choice. So one of the things that's interesting in Shidduchim is that it was much more successful at a time when your choices were far more limited. You came from a very specific religious village where you might share your respective families knew each other, and there weren't that many families then. So too much choice, if you think about it, does capacitate somebody even in business. I mean, Arthur and I have done business research, new projects to get into, and the option of choice is hectic. I remember growing up in the 80s, you had two types of cheese, mild and strong. One type of fish, you had trout, you had maybe a hake and king clip. That was it.
It was Gouda, cheddar, and mozzarella. That was our choice.
Yeah.
But all I'm saying is the whole article by this Barry Schwartz was talking about the problem is that most people today, when they choose spouses, they've got such a big shopping list. And there's so many choices, particularly when it's not like a small community, that they always think there's somebody better around the corner. And that's done by two things: freedom of choice and being sold that everything is achievable to everybody. And those two damaging forces together have caused more misery than when we just grew up with one haggle-toothed chick in the village. I promise you. And on that note, I wanted to stop here. I wanted to what? Do you disagree with anything I'm saying here, Arth?
Just your haggle-tooth.
Yeah?
No, you just described Joburg. That haggle-tooth chick. We're all fighting for her.
Yeah, but, I'm serious. If you look at Tinder or things like that, the amount of potential partners, I mean, take a look at this. You don't know a person. You pick them and look. After 2 seconds, you've surmised that there's nothing worthy about them, and you swipe them. I mean, how would you like it if somebody was in front of you? They did this experiment, by the way, with Tinder, where they had a live Tinder, where they had 10 people in front of them, and the minute you didn't like their look, you swiped them. You know how many people really did swipe them? Very few. You know how many people were deeply spiritually embarrassed to just say, "You're not my look," and kick them out the picture? Like you do with impunity on Tinder? There's something very, very ill in our society now.
No, I think it's their fault. They shouldn't have participated in the experiment. It's a toxic one.
What do you mean they? Everybody that's on Tinder is part of that experiment. I'm saying what they did do is in the live one, they had 10 girls holding a box around them, and the guys had to, in front of the girls, say, "No good, no good, no good," and choose one. And they were really, really embarrassed to do so because you're dealing with a live human being. The minute you see a one-dimensional girl with you, say, "But fat, not quite nice," and you push on to the next one, you know nothing about her. And everybody's going to say the same thing in the profile. I like dogs, I like cats, I like going out and dancing in the rain and meeting new challenges, nauseating stuff. What are they meant to turn around and say on these sort of messages? They're all going to sound generic. So unfortunately, technology today has added to this infection. It really has. So all I'm saying is that what you need to do is work out your choices before you do research in anything. In other words, try not to focus too much on the look or some sort of superficiality, and have some deal breakers. In other words, if a person has this sort of character, I'm not going to be able to live with them because it's going to conflict with my character. Meaning, if you're an easygoing person and that person is going to go to DEFCON 4 and go mad every time you do something minor, it's not a match. She can look like a 10 out of 10, but she's going to be horrific to live with.
Yeah.
So focus on midot, and it's just a cup of coffee. Give everybody a chance just to get to know them. And you don't have to have those giddy feelings in the first date. I promise you it takes time to know somebody. Gavin, I've known you for years. You're as crazy as I was the first time I met you. But I've seen a depth to you that the first time was pure craziness, and now it's ingenious. So you never get to know a person on the first go. You know?
No, you just deteriorating. You were deteriorating 2 years ago.
I know, in every way.
You've come down, so you think I've become smarter. That's all. No, I haven't.
Exactly.
I've stayed the same.
I probably have deteriorated. The truth of it is, that's called familiarity breeds contempt. All right. So, Stephen, what we're discussing is different issues. What I would love to do is, when it suits you, now that you've got technology, I will make time one evening so that you and I can go through the concepts. The reason being is that there's a lot of ground covered, and all of these issues are going to keep reoccurring. So I'd love to spend some time with you when it suits you, and then go through it with you, just some of the major concepts. You don't have to have every detail so that you can follow in the coupling duffs, because every duff is built on the next duff. So unfortunately, they're not independent, they're in succession. So would you, can we work out some sub-tab, that I can give you a call that'll be good for you? Is that all right with you?
Yeah, maybe this evening, yeah. So, all right, yeah, let's see.
So, it doesn't have to be something if you don't want to do it. But since you are attending,
it's a few weeks
to be informed. Okay. Oh. So basically, where we started was as follows, is that Rava is discussing a particular incident of Tsoros. So the one incident that we're dealing with now, I'm not going to, for the sake of the guys that managed to attend, go through every issue, but the issue we're dealing with now is that Tsoros, according to Sumchus, is full payment. Okay, Tsoros is a law from Moshe at Har Sinai. When a horse gallops, for example, and kicks up a stone, and it hits a utensil in the private domain. So that's considered Tsoros. It's a special law from Moshe of Har Sinai, and it's half payment damages. And Sumchus says it's full payment damages. The reason being is that Sumchus doesn't acknowledge, I don't think he's got a tradition where he's heard this rule from Moshe of Har Sinai. Because Sumchus and the rabbis agree in principle that if it wasn't for this law from Moshe of Har Sinai, that you pay full damages for the damage your animal did. It wouldn't matter if your animal kicked an object directly or kicked a stone into an object. It's still the same as if I pick up a stone, Stephen, and I throw it through your bedroom or your car window, or I take my fist and I put it through your car window. I should pay the same no matter what. So the special law of Moshe of Har Sinai is coming to say that indirect damage is a half payment damage in the way that the animal naturally walks. So it mimics regel in that it's a subcategory of regel. It's the way the animal naturally gallops. But it resembles Keren in that the thumb payment is a half payment damage. So we did already discuss an argument that is that half payment from choice property, like a standard case of regel, or is that half payment damage from the body of the damaging animal, like Keren? So now we're on to a different topic. I will always catch up privately, and we're saying, listen, this law of Tsoros, does it resemble Keren or does it resemble regel? The reason why we think it could resemble Keren is there's only two case histories we've learned in the Gemara so far of half payment damages. The one in Tsoros, and the other one is Keren Tam, a tame animal that gores or intends to kill or injure. And Keren is determined by two unique features. Its unusualness of damage. Whenever there's unusual damage, it's put down to Keren, or whenever an animal's intent is to kill or injure. Those are your two facets of Keren. Your facet of regel is regel damage, is regular damage, common damage. That's where the word regular comes from. And Stephen is gone. Maybe it might be coming back. Maybe there'll be a second coming for Stephen.
Second win.
Like this, Damon. You see this?
Yeah, like that. Exactly. Kevin got my joke. Okay. So, All right. So until Stephen comes
We're talking
back,
about Regal and Kieran. You were just trying to fill him in.
Yeah, I
Okay.
don't want to go through the whole thing because he needs to give me time. I'm not going to slow down.
Okay, but Damon, I think maybe continue and speak to him privately, I think, because he's gone off. Maybe he won't come back.
No, of course I will.
Should I try phone him? Should I try contact him?
No, he knows how to get hold of us. He's got the link. So we're going to go on for now. And he's got a bell to let us know when he's arrived, a chime bell. Okay? So let's just go on. And Rava, so we're on 18b3. Rava inquired, is there muad for tzoros or is there no muad for tzoros? What are the two sides of the question? Do we liken the case of tzoros to keren, in that if there's more than 3 times that there is tzoros damage, it becomes full payment damage, because at the moment it's a half payment damage? Or is it a derivative of regal, where we say, listen, it has nothing to do with keren in concept, and since it's a torda of regal, there's no reason it should become muad after after 3 offenses. Does that make sense? So that's the argument we're dealing with now. We've already dealt with, is it like keren where it's paid from the body of the animal, or is it like a derivative of regal that's paid from choice property? So now we're dealing with the case of how many times tzoros occurs, and if for normal tzoros it ever becomes muad full payment damages, or does it stay at half payment damages? That's the issue we're dealing with today. Okay? So the Gemara seeks to resolve this inquiry. Come learn a proof from the following brisa. Hopping is not considered muad for a chicken. Some say, however, that it is considered muad. The Gemara analyzes this brisa. Can you think that the brisa refers to a simple case of hopping? Certainly all must agree that it is normal for a chicken to hop. Rather, the brisa must mean that the chicken was hopping and it sent pebbles flying into a utensil, breaking it. Is it not speaking in a case where the chicken did this 3 times? And the Tanaim in the brisa argue about the following point. One master holds that there is muad for tzoros, whereas the other master, the Bava Kamma, holds there's no muad for tzoros. So what it's trying to use is this chicken hopping brisa to say that maybe it's a case where it does it habitually, it now becomes muad to full payment damages, or maybe we see that even if it does it habitually, it still doesn't become liable to full payment damages. Stephen's in the waiting room. Just give me 1 sec.
He's dying in a...
Steve?
Yeah, sorry, I have technical issues.
No problem. So, all right. So what I'm going to do is we'll catch up in a private session. So whatever you manage to get, you'll get. But I think if you're investing so much good time for your parents, if you give me 40 minutes of your time one evening, I'll save you a lot of time. So what we're trying to say here is it not speaking in a case where the chicken sent pebbles hopping 3 times, and the Tanaim and the brisa argue about the following point. One master says that there's muad for tzoros because the damage is caused more than 3 times, and therefore it's full payment damages like keren. Whereas the Bava Kamma, the anonymous rabbinical sources, hold that there is no muad for tzoros, meaning no matter how many times the case of tzoros occurs, it's still half payment damages according to the law from Moshe of Har Sinai. Now, one thing to bear in mind here, guys, we're not talking about tzoros mixed with tam, because we learned that tzoros mixed with keren tam is treated as keren tam. Does that make sense? In the previous brisa, the animal happened to move an object from point A to B, which is the act of an animal's force, but it was principally a case of keren. So we're talking about a case here. The Gemara wants to know in a case. Rava's question was on plain tzoros. So the previous case had tam within it, which never resolved Rava's question. So this is where we are. Now, there is a problem I'm finding in the brisa. Not only this brisa, but the brisa to follow. So, Kevin, this is the problem. It says, is it not speaking in the case where the chicken did this 3 times? Now, what's bothering you about that question? Anybody? 3 times?
Yeah, because it shouldn't make any difference. There should be there's no limit. It's a law from Hasina, and it's indefinite.
Okay, so that is one opinion, but my issue is the word 3 times. We've always learned with Keren, on the 4th time it becomes muad, not on 3 times. So I need to find out where it said, did this 3 times, did Naim argue about the following point? Yes.
Is it considered the hopping? Isn't the hopping considered like regel?
Yes.
Is it considered like Keren?
This is what we're going to determine now. Is the hopping considered where the animal, after doing it more than 3 times on the 4th time, is liable to full payments like Keren, time that becomes muad? Or is it like a derivative of regel that it's a special law from Moshe of Har Sinai that stays at half payment damages? The question I have for you guys is this brisa, and the brisa to follows mentions that the chicken did it 3 times. Now, what's bothering me is we've always learned a case of Keren Tam where the chicken has to do it 4 times, or the animal 4 times, in order to become muad. Arthur, what's amusing you?
It's just that on the 3rd time the chicken's dead anyway. Never gets the 4th. My chicken does it 3 times, it becomes supper.
You know what? Arthur's 100% right. If this chicken is a menace, it's going to land up as a Shabbos roast. Okay.
It never gets the 4th time.
Yeah, I know. Arthur will say, here, chicken. It's going to land up as a Shabbos roast if it's going to end up costing him money.
Yeah.
It wouldn't last 3 times. On the 2nd Shabbos, we'd be saying Shira Malot over the chicken.
That's basically it. That's probably why there's no 4th time for a chicken, because the time it's the 3rd time it becomes dinner.
Yeah, it's not like an ox that's worth a lot of money. It's just a Shabbos chicken. Very possible. That's a possible answer. And yeah, and this ad is sponsored. This ad is sponsored by Kosher Nando's. Okay. So we're gonna have to find out the story of this sinister chicken, and why after 3 times instead of 4 times it's considered muad. Maybe Arthur has a point. Maybe it's tickets for the chicken at a certain point. Anyway, so what ends up happening is that this question, the Gemara rejects this proof. It says, look, the Tanaim may be speaking about ordinary tzoros of 1 time, and they argue in the point of a dispute between Sumchus and the rabbis. So what the Gemara is trying to say is, listen, you can't read into a brisa. Why can't you read into a brisa? Well, it's very, very simple. When the brisa says the chicken is muad or the chicken is not muad, it hasn't mentioned how many times the animal has created this lethal offense for its own well-being. And therefore, based on that, you can only derive when they say it's muad for a chicken kicking pebbles, is that the view is going according to Sumchus, where there's full payment damage, where Sumchus doesn't hold by this law of Moshe of Har Sinai, or it's going according to the view of the rabbis, the Tana Kamma, the anonymous opinion, which says it's half payment damages because in ordinary sroros it holds by the law of Moshe from Har Sinai. So it says you cannot determine the habitual nature of Toros, and if this will answer the question on this brisa. So we're going to the next brisa. The Gemara seeks to resolve this inquiry on the basis of another source. Come learn a proof from the following Amoraic dispute. If an animal dropped dung onto a dough, ruining it, Rav Yehuda says the animal's owner pays full damages, but Rav Elazar says he only pays half the damage. Okay, so now we've hit a new brisa. Again, Rav Yehuda says the animal's owner pays full damages, and Rav Elazar says he only pays half the damage. In what case, guys? What are we talking about? What did I just say? The case that an animal does what? Guys,
you said if it drops dough or something into dung or something. What did you say?
Yeah, no, not drops dough into dung. It's a waste of dough then. If it drops dung into dough.
Dung into dough. Yeah. Okay. Well, I had it sort of right.
Yeah, you can't eat it either way. Gavin actually had it completely right because you wouldn't eat that dough either way. So well done.
Yeah.
We hold by your opinion, Gavin. We're not going to eat the dough either way.
I appreciate it. I'm a bit dyslexic, so sometimes you have to read stuff backwards.
So do you lie awake?
It wasn't, Damon, that wasn't a half-baked effort by him, eh? You know that.
It wasn't a half-baked effort, exactly.
Yeah, there we go.
So what we're trying to determine with this new duff is if an animal drops dung in dough, Rav Yehuda says the animal's owner pays full damage. Rav Elazar says half damage. So is it not speaking in a case where the animal did this 3 times, and they, Rav Yehuda and Rav Elazar, argue about the following point? One master, Rav Yehuda, holds that there's muad for tzoros, whereas the other master, Rav Elazar, holds there's no muad for tzoros. Again, Rav Yehuda is saying this has happened 3 times, and therefore the animal is muad for full payment. And Rav Elazar is saying that it's done it a single time, and therefore there's no muad for tzoros. Sorry,
Damon, sorry. Can I say something?
No. Sorry, Kevin. One last thing, and then you can say Rav Elazar is not saying that he did it 1 time. Rav Elazar is also saying that it's 3 times. Does that make sense? So both of
otherwise it's no argument. Yeah.
And saying Rav Elazar is saying it doesn't matter that the animal did it more than 3 times. It's still not muad. And Rav Yehuda is saying it did it more than 3 times. There it's muad. So therefore, we seem to learn that Rav Yehuda is saying for more than 3 times of a case of tzoros, the animal is muad like keren tam. And Rav Elazar is saying that the animal did this more than 3 times, then the animal is not muad, because the case of tzoros is a derivative of rego and has nothing to do with keren tam. Because it's not like the animal is now a habitual gora or is known to be wild and it was a one-time event. Kevin, what was your question?
Okay, so you're saying that dung in the dough is tzoros, basically. That's
okay. So very good question. Kevin's asking a good question.
But I got another point on that. Sorry, can I just interject?
Please tell me.
So, but a person who's the genius that leaves dung in a public domain or private domain where it's near chickens, and the chicken, if it's outside, it shouldn't. But maybe dung in the dough, maybe that should be considered muad from the outset, from the get-go.
Okay,
Kevin's
asking 2 separate, very good questions. He's asking 2 very separate questions. He's saying, let me just see if I understand you right, Kevin. I might not. Let me just see if I. The first question is, why bring a point of, and I'd like to address Kevin's question because they're both very good. Why is it bringing this issue of dung? Into dough? We understand why it was the chicken hopping, because when we learnt about the body of the animal, or we learnt about other cases, we had this brisa of the chicken hopping around. Okay, we had that brisa already, so just using the previous brisa. But why bring a brisa of an animal that drops dung into dough? Like, why specifically this brisa? So Kevin brought on a good point. The reason it brings this brisa is it now wants to teach us, which we're going to learn later on, new rules of tzoros. Is it considered shane? Is it considered tzoros? Is it considered keren because it's unusual to drop dung on dough? Is it considered normal? So cases of shane, keren, and tzoros are going to be dealt with. We're going to learn all from this case of the animal dropping dung onto dough. So do you remember what Rabbi Aran Cohen said? He said these cases are fictitious. Why? We're trying to teach principles. So when, for example, I do Excel training as part of our Microsoft training courses, we say there is ABC company and Johnny is an auditor at that company. And he wants to look at the financials in the Johannesburg region versus the Durban, and he's doing name range formulas. Now, that story is fictitious, but why we set up a story is to teach the point of the lesson of how to do the procedures and why they're doing the procedures, conceptually why they're doing the procedures, and procedures how to do it, and conceptual as in why to do it. So this case of the animal dropping dung into dough is going to teach us, Kevin, 3 points. This is what Kevin's alluding to. Why bring up this case? Is number one, it's going to teach us is just a stone is independent of an animal. So when an animal kicks up a stone, it has nothing to do with an animal. What happens if it's a body part that's detached from the animal? Is it considered being part of the animal itself because it was once housed in the animal, like feces? Or is it considered separate? If it's considered joined, it might be a case of Shane physical gratification, or it might be a case if it's detached of Soros. If it's abnormal for an animal to drop dung into dough, because animals generally don't defecate where there's food, then it's a case of abnormal Soros put into the keren, to the Soros case, or maybe it's not mixed with Soros, and it's a case of Shane on its own. Maybe we've learned a case of keren and Soros. We've never learned a case of Shane and Soros, for example. Nor have we learned a case of Shane on its own, and is it part of the animal? So, Kevin, this example is going to bring out lessons that we're going to learn about how do we calculate damage. So 3 things that we can use to calculate. Is this normal for an animal to do it? That's your first principle. That will determine if there's any feature of unusual damage where keren is added to the mix of Soros, or if it's not. If it's normal, then it's Soros on its own. If it's a case where the dung is considered part of the animal's body, is it muad for regel because it's considered part of the animal's body, like a foot that comes down? Or is it a case of Soros because we learn like a zav, it's not attached to the animal at the time that it infects the dough? So is it a case then of Soros as opposed to actual regel that was attached to the animal, like a foot coming down? Or is it a case of Shane where the animal relieves itself and gets physical gratification? Now you might say, Kevin, to me, what is the difference between all of this? The difference between all of this is the difference between half payment damages and full payment damages. Why? Because anything to do with keren on the first offense of unusualness, or for the first 3 offenses, is half payment damages. Anything to do with Shane and regel is full payment damages. Anything to do with Soros is half payment damages. And what we might learn is a concept that what happens if you've got keren and Soros together? Does it become quarter payment damages? How quarter? Well, if keren is half and Soros is half, maybe we work out quarter, because the keren has come to further reduce the Soros, or maybe the Soros has further come to reduce the keren. So we're looking at 3 different types of costings here. And what for? Either if it occurs in a public domain, and it's considered a case of keren, if it's considered a case of Shane or regel, like, for example, that the animal relieves itself, say it was caused according to that, there's no payment in the public domain, right? If it's considered unusual damage, then in that case, Shane and regel are exempt in the public domain. It's in the damaged party's yard, it would be considered full payment damages. If it's Soros in the private domain, it would be considered half payment damages. If it's keren in the private domain, half payment damages according to the rabbi, and full payment damages according to Rabbi Talfon. If we have a look at a combination between keren and Soros, could be quarter payment damages, because the keren and Soros mitigate each other somewhat, because the 2 are both half payment damages, therefore they might add leniencies to each other. So Kevin is asking a brilliant question. Why do we mention this case? And this case is going to unravel other examples. Have I satisfied your question, Kev?
Yeah.
Yeah, nice questions, Kevin.
Yeah. Very,
I
very
think,
nice.
Damon, a good idea. I don't know
Yes.
if maybe you've sent it, maybe I forgot about it, is a chart of all the damages full damages, half damages, note in the public. Did you ever do a chart? I can't remember. Maybe you did, or is there something available? I think it might make it easier for all of us. It's
okay. We've got the basis of Gavin's chart. We could try and look at another chart with pleasure, just to add to that.
Yeah, it'd be a nice thing for all of us. Yeah, but don't spend too much time on. I mean, it's as long as it doesn't. So I think it's more easier for all of us. Yeah, to see.
Okay.
It's.
I'm keen. I don't have an issue with that. That sounds good to me. I might do it over Sunday, where it's not during a work week, so that if I give the shiur on Sunday morning, I can do it on Saturday night or whatever.
Whenever it's convenient for you, it'll make it easier for all of us, I think, and especially Stephen as well. Stephen as well, just coming in. It'll make him. Maybe it'll speed things up for him also, possibly.
Okay, so that's no problem. So what I was going to suggest to you is that I'll do that. So back to the Amorite dispute. So this was it. Animal dropped dung onto dough. And the brisa, not the brisa, the dispute actually proposes that the animal does this 3 times, and Rav Yehuda says that the animal is muat, because Rav Yehuda would seem to hold that for tzoros more than 3 times is like keren tam, and it's full payment damages. And Rav Elazar said it's a derivative of rego, special law from Moshe of Har Sinai, and it never becomes muat, full payment damages for tzoros. That's what it seems to read. And the Gemara rejects this proof as well. It says, no, the Amoraim may be speaking about tzoros of 1 time, and they argue in the point of dispute between Sumchus and the rabbis. So what it's saying is here, no, you might have thought that Rav Yehuda was saying that if an animal damages more than 3 times, it becomes full payment for tzoros. But what we're saying is, no, Rav Yehuda actually agrees with Sumchus that for a normal case of tzoros, it's full damages. And Rav Elazar agrees with the rabbis, it might seem, that in fact there is no muad for tzoros, because he holds like the rabbis that there's a special rule from Moshe of Har Sinai. So it's saying before you actually interpret that Rav Yehuda and Rav Elazar are arguing about the point of how many times the tzoros to damage, we could be arguing about the point about whether there's full payment damages for tzoros according to Sumchus and the rabbis. And Rav Yehuda is holding like Sumchus, and Rav Elazar is holding according to the rabbis. So why does the Gemara reject this proof, Kevin? It rejects this proof because it says there's no wording in this brisa or the chicken hopping that implies that there's more than 3 times. It doesn't mention quantity. But the one thing that we're going to learn is we're going to come to learn a daf, which discusses, is muad for keren tam 3 times or the 4th time? More than 3 times, because it's the first time that it's been introduced that it seems to be 3 times. Maybe it's a case like Arthur said, that when we're talking all of a sudden about chickens, we know that it's going to land up on the Shabbos table, so we don't give it as many chances. But an animal that causes dung and dough could be either an ox or it could be a chicken. I don't know. But I'm going to go with the story.
Yeah? If the ox drops the dough, there ain't nothing left. It's just an ox. A chicken you can get away with. By the way, if the chicken drops something in dough, can you pay them with dough?
That's very funny. That's a good pun. Can you pay them with money, dough? That's cute, man. So I just want to end off here on 13b3. We can end off on 4 today. We've got 10 minutes. And then the Gemara asks, is it abnormal for an animal to drop dung onto a dough? Okay. And we're on 18b4. The Gemara answers, the Amoraim referred to where the animal was confined in a narrow place and therefore could not move away from the dough when dropping the dung. That answers Kevin's second question. Who could be so stupid to keep an animal right by where the dung is? So nobody keeps their bread loaf under an animal's poop valve, Kev. That's not what we're saying here. What we're saying here is that you can consider it like a stable. Like in a stable or a house or whatever, you've got animals running around, and Arthur's got his cat running around, and Nadine is busy baking bread, and she's leaving the yeast to rise. And in that case, the cat comes and relieves itself, instead of in the sandbasket outside, in Arthur's whole wheat loaf bread.
How did you know?
Because it's got that sour taste. I just thought it was sourdough.
Damon.
Carry on playing.
Okay, so the thing of that is, what we're saying here is, no, listen, whoever left it there, it was a big animal and there wasn't enough space. That's the classic case where, as Kevin said, the person, the animal could not move away from the dough. Now, it seems that Rashi wants to add other two insights. The one insight is that the animal could have had diarrhea, meaning that generally when an animal is careful not to create excrement on food, but when anybody's got diarrhea, you don't have control over your bowels, and therefore there could be an accident. And in that case, it's not considered abnormal damage for an animal. In other words, Kevin, if an animal relieves itself on food, on its own food, or on your food, it's abnormal. So that would consider maybe a case of Keren mixed with Soros. But a case of Pute Soros would only be a case where the animal maybe had diarrhea. Why? Because it's not unusual damage then. Because it's not an animal's nature to basically defecate where there's food. Also, according to the Amoraic answer, the animal, if it's confined to a narrow space, couldn't move away, so it's not unusual damage. So that answers Kevin's second question, that because it's a normal case of Soros, the person would have to pay half payment damages. And if he did it more than 3 times, that's where the case of the Tanaic dispute or the Amoraic dispute would occur, because we don't know. But the Brisa hasn't answered the question. Now, interestingly enough, Rashi says that, firstly, 2 points, that if an animal was suffering from diarrhea, there's no physical relief that it gets from its activity, from defecation. It's different, for example, Kevin, to an animal that gets physical relief. That, say you're bursting to go to the loo, you're on your way to Durban and you're from Johannesburg and you want to stop in Mooi River, and there's no stop gas station, and you don't want to get tick bite fever by relieving yourself on the side of the road and having a tick bite you in the tuchus. If that's the case, you want to wait for the next pit stop at Mooi River. So by the time you run to the toilet, you're bursting. That would be considered, we're asking a question, would it be considered shame? Because it's physical gratification, you're relieving yourself. And Rashi wants to teach us here that shame is not considered relevant for indirect damage, which means if an animal urinates on wheat, it's not considered shame, even though shame, which is physical gratification damage, even though the animal is feeling relief, because it's not direct damage. So Rashi wants to learn that the tordas of shame is when an animal rolls in oats or relieves an itch against a wall, and the wall falls over, or you damage those jungle oats to where that tastes very horsey. And the primary case of shame is where the animal consumes the oats in the field by eating them. But he's saying that there's no torda of shame by an animal relieving itself, even though there's physical gratification, because there's no direct contact of the animal. Does that make sense? So either there's no physical gratification because the animal having diarrhea doesn't feel physically gratified because he's pooping all the time. So it's not like it's relieving something that had been built up. And the second point Rashi wants to make is that he doesn't consider that there is a case of shame for indirect contact for an animal relieving itself. So that's why it's coming to bring this particular example, because now we're learning new principles. Okay? So if these Amoraim merely dispute how much one pays for tzoros, then Rav Yehuda should say the halacha follows sumchus. And Rav Elazar should say that the halacha follows the rabbis. Why do the Amoraim construct their own cases to illustrate this dispute without just being clear and say Rav Yehuda should say he holds full payment damages because he follows like sumchus for tzoros, and Rav Elazar says there's the not murad half payment damages because he follows the halach of the rabbis from the law of Moshe of Har Sinai. So the Gemara answers, Rav Elazar needed to teach us that an animal's dropping of dung is a case of tzoros. Otherwise, you might have thought to say that since the droppings are subordinate to the animal's body, in other words, since they're contained inside, it is like a case in which the animal has inflicted damage directly with its body, like a standard case of regal. Therefore, informs us that it is nonetheless a case of tzoros. Okay? So what it's saying is we learned from here, Arthur, Kevin, just one last minute, is that we would have thought that maybe dung is a case of regal because it's part of the animal's body. Just like it's full payment damages when an animal stands and damages something by, we might have thought that when an animal defecates, it was part of the excrement was part of the animal's body, and therefore it's a case of regal, Arthur, of full payment damages. So we're saying that's what Rav Elazar and Rav Yehuda are coming to teach us, this new principle, that in fact, once it leaves the animal's body, it's not directly part of its body, and therefore it's a case of tzoros, which is why, just hang on a second, which is why it's not a case of shame. Sorry, guys. So therefore, it's not a case of shame. Why is it not a case of shame? Because the animal would only get physical gratification from direct touch. It's not a case of regal because it came directly from the animal's body, like a footlock comes down, and therefore it's a case of tzoros, which both shame and regal are full payment damages, where tzoros is half payment damages. Okay. So we come to learn that an animal's dung, once it's leaving its body, is indirect. As Rashi said, same as shame, it's not physical gratification because it's indirect. An animal relieving itself is indirect. All right, guys, thank you and have a nice day. Eh?
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.